Collide, to hit with force when moving, crash, or run into. We often live at the intersection of striving in our own efforts versus thriving in God's plans. It is at this intersection that there is often a collision of our will and the will of God. Our will, our way, our wants, our world. When our desires collide with God's heart, there is a forceful awakening in our lives that will cause us to realize that His ways are far bigger than anything we have ever dreamed. We have a decision to make: to follow God or forsake His plan and purpose for our lives. God's will, God's way. Are you ready to collide?
Amen. Everybody say, faith ignites. And say, fear extinguishes. Say it with me again. Faith ignites. Fear extinguishes. We're talking about the collision today. At the intersection, we often find ourselves between faith and fear. And I want to say this: we spiritualize fear way too much in our lives, and we elevate it, and we actually embrace fear far too much and far too often in our lives. We're talking about God's will, God's way, my will, my way. God's will, God's way is always the way of faith. He says embrace this journey that He has us on by faith. The human way, my will, my way, is fear. And often our future is defined by our fear instead of our faith. I'll say it again. Often the future that is ahead of us is defined by our fear of it instead of our faith to embrace it. So we're going to go there today. At the end of this gathering, I'm going to make a bold proclamation to you about what we believe, the elders and I believe, is our next step at Church Alive, and invite you into praying with us as we embark on this journey. So it's an exciting time to be alive. Speaking of faith and fear, several years ago, or actually a year and a half ago, Laura and I decided through prayer that we were going to sell our house. How many of you have ever sold a house before? Let me see your hand. It's a journey. It's a process. And so by faith, we embraced the journey, believing we lived in this house for 14 years. We wanted to sell it, move, get a little bit of land in that way. And so we did all the things. We got the house ready, looking all good. You know, when you start doing projects in your house, you're probably about to sell your house. You know, your husband or your wife's been saying, can we redo the kitchen? You redo the kitchen, and all of a sudden you want to sell the house. You don't even enjoy the kitchen that you've redone. Anybody lived that before? Let me see your hand. All right. So we decided, okay, it's time. So we interviewed real estate agents. And we brought in 3 different real estate agents. The first one came in, and you would know them if I called their name. They do not go to our church. But they came in, highly recommended. They looked around our house in 5 seconds and told us what we could sell our house for. And I'm like, no, I believe that we can sell our house for more than that. She said, good luck, and we said goodbye. Second real estate agent came in. She was very well prepared. She gave us the market analysis. She gave us all the things, and my head started spinning. I'm like, I just want to sell my house. I have a number that I want to sell my house for. I think we can get around that. And she kept going, and she kept going. I said, we'll be in touch. The third real estate agent came in, and she was very thorough, very kind. She was not all up in my space, all up in my grill. We told her what we thought we could sell the house for, what we wanted to sell the house for. And here's what she said, and this was the moment. Let's go for it. Let's go for it. And she said, let's put it on the market for that. Let's see where we go, and let's see what happens. I'm in it with you. I'm with it. I'm in it with you. We'll go this thing together. So we put it on the market for sale. People driving by in the neighborhood. We lived there for a long time. Are y'all moving away? The rumors were flying that we were moving, leaving the church. I'm like, no, we're not leaving the church. We are still the pastors of Church Alive. We're just selling our house to move. 1 month went by, tons of showings. 2 months went by, tons of showings. Half of another month went by, tons of showings, not a single offer on our home. Now, we started the journey by faith, And now that faith is starting to dwindle. Are we out of our minds? Are we crazy? We're entering Thanksgiving season. We took our house off the market. We did not want people in and out of our house during Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we took it off the market. We put it back on the market in January of that year. February, March came and went. Lots of people in our home. We love your home. Great house. Super. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Not a single offer on our home. And the faith then turned into more of fear. Well, what are we going to do? I mean, we take the house off the market. Do we keep Journey by Faith? Do we? In this process, Laura had found a house that she really thought that we should buy, but it wasn't on the market. This house was not for sale. And I'm like, well, it seems like a great idea, but that house isn't for sale. And she said, I'll find out if they'll sell it to us. And I'm like, oh, my word. And so she did. And she said, well, if you ever want to sell this house, we'd be interested in buying. And I didn't think anything about it because that just doesn't happen. And so lo and behold, they called us back and said, we would sell you our house. And I'm like, you would? That is incredible. Now we need to sell our house. And it's been on the market for a really long time. And we went on a cruise that year, first and last time I've ever been on a cruise. I'm not saying I won't go on a cruise again, but haven't been on one since. And we got off the boat. The boat is wonderful because there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell phone. You're out in the middle of the ocean. It's awesome. You just can decompress. And so I was completely decompressed. And in that process, we decided we're going to give this until the end of April. And on April the 30th, if we have not sold the house, we're taking the house off the market. Now, this was either fear motivating us or we just were ready to move on from the thought of moving out of our house. And we both agreed. So we drove home. Still more showings, still no offer. The Sunday before, God has an incredible sense of humor. The Sunday before April the 30th, Sunday. Everybody say Sunday. The single worst day of the week for a pastor and his family to be showing their home. It's just not a good day. And I am thinking about, got up that morning, I'm like, okay, we're going to take the house off the market this week. We'll make the living room bigger, we'll do all this. We had all this stuff in our mind. And that day during church, I don't bring my cell phone up here because I don't want it blowing up and I don't want to be distracted. And I got to my office at the end of the fourth gathering or third gathering that day, and it was from our realtor, same realtor, great gal. And she said, very, very quick notice, but could your house be ready at 1:45 for a showing? I looked at my watch and it was almost 1 o'clock. I'm like, no, it cannot be ready at 1:45. I told Laura we rushed home. We probably broke the law, but God forgave us. We got in there, we just got the house ready. I mean, Sundays are rough. I mean, we're getting the house ready. There's probably stuff still in the house right now that we forgot that we stuffed in that nook or in that area. And we left, went out to Mexican to eat Mexican food. It's grown on me, my wife's favorite food. And so we are eating, and the realtor calls and says, I have an offer on your house. I said, no way. See, great faith. No way. And the offer was great. And I'm like, can they close tomorrow? No, they can't close tomorrow. They have to sell their house in Cary. So, by the way, people that live in Cary are actually trying to move out to Fuquay and Holly Springs and northern Harnett County. And I said, well, when can we close? She said it. And lo and behold, we sold our home. I mean, it was like, but during that process, our faith transitioned to fear. But I don't know what we were afraid of because we owned our home and we had a house to stay. But I didn't want hope to arise in my heart. That's why I wouldn't even get excited about the other house that we actually ended up buying that wasn't even for sale. And we love it and we enjoy our home. But that's just kind of a quick story about how this thing rolls because we often live at that intersection of faith and fear. Should we? Shouldn't we? Should we take the plunge or should we not take the plunge? Why would somebody want to buy our home or why would somebody want to do this? And we play this game out in our minds. And that's kind of the thrust here of this colliding moment. And I want to make the case for faith today. Everybody say faith. Let me give you a couple definitions for it. Taking the first step before God reveals the second step. So the Lord will give you the first step to take, and He's waiting for you to take it, but you have to take that step before He will reveal to you step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and the whole 9 years. It's the process of unlearning our fears. I love this one. How many of you have fears? Well, if you want to unlearn your fears, take this journey with God, because He will push you, He will move you, He will create moments to where you have to either embrace them by faith or fear. It's the willingness to look foolish. How many of you have ever looked foolish before? I mean, you've held on to something. Yep. It's seeing the invisible, hearing the inaudible, believing the impossible. I wrote this down. Faith is functioning outside the 5 senses that God has given us. How many of you have 5 senses? Let me see your hand. That should be 100%. You do. Some of them are better than others. Some of us can't see very well or hear very well, but others can smell well and taste well. And touch well, whatever the case may be. But to embrace the journey of faith, it's understanding that your 5 senses are in motion, but there's something else going on here. There's something that's unexplainable. And so faith is embracing it from a supernatural perspective. Fear is embracing it from a natural or human perspective. And there are many of you in this room today that you take this journey with the Lord, but you're afraid, you're fearful, you're nervous. And the Lord is wanting this collision to take place in your life so that you'll embrace it by faith. Here's what the Bible says about faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Everybody say impossible. We are saved by faith through grace. Everybody say saved. I love this one. The righteous will live by faith. Whoa. Everybody say the righteous. Hebrews chapter 11, I don't have time to read this. It's the Hall of Faith. It's an incredible chapter in the book of Hebrews. It talks about men and women who have been faithful to God. I'll give you a few. By faith, Abel offered a sacrifice to the Lord. By faith, Enoch walked with God, but then he was no more. By faith, Noah built a boat when there was no such thing as a boat. By faith, Abraham simply went. He had no idea where he was going, and he did it anyway. And it goes on and on and on and on and on in Hebrews 11. I want to pick up a story in Luke chapter 8, talking about living at the crossroads of faith and fear. There's a woman in this story. Jesus is in this story. And there's a whole lot of other people in this story. Now, I know I've heard people through the years go, I don't like big crowds. But yet I see pictures. Facebook lies, and sometimes it doesn't lie. I see pictures of some people who tell me they don't like crowds, and they're in this really huge crowd at a concert. And I'm like, do you not like church crowds? It could be that you don't like church crowds. You're okay with crowds. I don't know. But I got a feeling heaven's going to be crowded. Well, I hope heaven is crowded. This woman is here along with other people, and she's got a problem. She has a known issue in her body, and she's heard that Jesus is coming by. Now, one of the other gospel writers tells us that this woman has spent all of her money trying to find a solution for her problem, and she has yet to find a solution, and she's out of money. And often it's in those moments of desperation. Everybody say desperation. When you've exhausted all of your human responses, that you'll actually turn and maybe take the faith journey. I've seen that happen through the years. Let's pick this up in verse 43. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. Everybody say crushed. I like that word. The crowds were pressing in so tight on him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. I mean, boom, she was healed. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, he's going to bring some reality to it. Jesus. I mean, there's like so many people around you, they're pressing in on you. What do you mean? I don't know who touched you. Everybody's touching you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. There was a difference in this touch and in this moment and in this situation than it was for all the other people that were touching Jesus. Now, I don't know if anybody else was healed in this context and in this moment, but I know this moment was very real for this woman. I know that the power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, this is so profound, "Daughter." Everybody say daughter. No, I'm not a daughter, I'm a son. But the terms son or daughter are terms of endearment. They're terms of connection. They're terms of relationship. And Jesus calls this woman daughter here, and he says, "Your faith has healed you." Everybody say faith. No, I want to go, wait a minute, Jesus. I think you might have made a mistake. It was your power that healed this woman. But Jesus doesn't say that. He says, it is your faith that has healed you. And then he says, go in peace. I want to give you 3 quick things about faith. Then we'll talk a little bit about fear. And then we'll bring it home. And I want to talk to you about Church Alive. Because we have a real moment of embracing by faith the journey that God has for us. The first thing about faith here, and really the igniting of faith, is this. Faith is refusing to give up. Everybody say refusing. So I could say this to you today about your marriage, about your job, about your relationships, about any decision that you have in your life. Perhaps it's not the same as this woman. This woman has a problem. She will not stop bleeding, and everybody in the region knows the woman has a problem, and she cannot be healed. And she just needs to go. She needs to live by herself in isolation. She needs to accept her plight and leave well enough alone. But this woman draws a line in the sand and refuses to listen to all the voices and all the authorities tell her there's no hope, there's no future, there's no possibility. I'm telling you today, I do not know what your situation is. I do not know what your circumstance is. I do not know what your struggle is. I don't even know what your marriage is like. I don't know what your relationships are like. I don't know what kind of anxiety or struggle you have internally in the depth of your soul. But I'm telling you today, that first moment of igniting faith in your life is refusing to give up. Maybe you have not gotten an answer. Maybe you've not learned what you wanted to learn, or you've not heard what you wanted to hear. But like this woman, you need to draw a line in the sand and refuse to give up and move forward by faith in this life and on this journey that God has for you. So this woman, she saw it. She was in it. She heard that Jesus was coming through. I don't know how. I don't know who told her. But she sees him off in a distance, and she finds herself here in this place. This leads me to this principle called the progressive overload principle. How many of you run? Let me see your hand. And I'm not talking about from your car to your house in the rain. How many of you work out? I mean, you pump iron. Let me see your hand. Yeah. Well, if you pump the same iron, the same weight, for 5 years, the results are not going to be what you want them to be. Here's what you have to do. Your muscles are responding, whether you're running or you're pumping iron. Do you know that your heart is a muscle? How many of you know that your heart is a muscle? It needs to be exercised as well. We call that cardiovascular. We call that running, biking, swimming, doing something, hiking, changing elevation, doing something to build your heart muscle up. Whether it's your heart muscle or your biceps and triceps or your thighs or your legs, whatever it is, your back, your chest, poke it out. Whatever it is you're working out, maybe your stomach, but that's another story. Lay off the donuts and the cookies and cream milkshakes, but we'll move on. Progressive overload is the gradual increase in volume, intensity, or frequency in order to receive a targeted goal. So, what you're basically doing when you run, you target where you're going to run, how long you're going to run, and then sometime later you're going to add to that run. And what you're doing when you add to the run, your muscles get really used to the one run, and it's not going to do a lick of good for you. All right? But when you add to the run, the next morning your muscles are going to tell you, dude, you got me outside my comfort zone, and now you're going to pay. That's what your muscles do. Same thing with working out. You add a little weight, your pumping iron, and then you put a little extra weight on there. The next day, your muscles are going to tell you, whoa. And what happens when you practice this, you are actually, and this is counterintuitive, you are breaking your muscles down in order to build them up. Everybody say broken. It's kind of like this in faith. Real faith is often ignited in the seasons of brokenness in our lives. When we've done everything we can do, our pride is kicked in, we're rolling, we've decided this is how it's going to be, and it's not working, and we are broken. We're in this place of brokenness, and we've declared this, and it's not happening. That's when real faith can ignite in our lives. It's that moment of brokenness. Everybody say brokenness. So always remember, if you're running or you're working out or you're pumping iron, you got to go a little further periodically in order for your muscles to unlearn what it is that they have learned about you and about how you're going to work them out, and you're going to feel the pain. Sometimes it takes the pain and feeling the pain in our spiritual journey in order for us to realize, man, I got to embrace this by faith. Everybody say faith. Second thing is this. I love this. Refusal to give up and crushing into Jesus. Everybody say crush. I love it. And I'm not talking about the orange drink either. Here's the deal. There's a lot of people that will watch and see the Lord move. And let me say this. Wherever Jesus is at, miracles and powerful things happen. I want to tell you today, wherever Jesus is, there is a chance for miracles and powerful things to happen. And it's going to attract people. People are going to be attracted to hope and to healing and to liberty and to possibility and to the future. And so you're dreaming a pipe dream if you think you're going to keep it all to yourself and you and Jesus got this little network going and nobody's going to find out about it. People are going to find out about where Jesus is moving, and they're going to want to be where Jesus is at. So that means there's going to be a crowd that's going to gather. But here's what we do. Sometimes we see the crowd gather and go, well, there's really no room here for me, and I need to go somewhere else. Jesus always has room for you in the crowd. I'll say it again. Jesus always has room for you in the crowd. There is always room. And so the woman sees the crowd. She's not supposed to be there. There's a chance she should be yelling out, unclean, I'm unclean, there's something wrong with me. She presses in. People are touching Jesus, but she finds herself in this moment with the crowd because Jesus is passing by. I wonder how many of us would be willing to wait or willing to join the crush, willing to join the moment where Jesus is moving, even if it's out of our comfort zone. Because there are some people that are not comfortable with great big crowds, or not comfortable being around other people where something is happening. How many of us would be willing to join that movement or join that moment or join that momentum in order to have God do something very powerful, very profound, and very prophetic in our lives? How many of us would be willing to crush into Jesus? You see, we got this thing, we got to tiptoe around and not make Jesus mad because he's like Godzilla up there and he's going to bounce on you and he's going to knock you down. No, he's wanting to pour into you the fullness of heaven. Are y'all with me, church? This is the difference between why and why not. You're either a why or a why not person in this room. The person who asks why will often be driven by fear. Well, why should I go? Jesus doesn't have time for me, or I'm not going to get prayed for, or I'm not going to feel the touch of you. Why should I just do it? And then you have the why not. I believe this woman was a why not. I know I'm not supposed to be out there. I know I've got this issue. I know all these people are going to know me, but why not? Why not seize this moment? I've tried everything else. Why not take the plunge, and why not touch Jesus? Are y'all with me, church? Be the why not. The third thing is this. This is huge. Receiving the full power of Jesus. So this is the full ignition. Everybody say ignition. the woman touches the hem. And I mean, it's just the little tassels that are flowing down on the bottom of his garment. She touches it, and Jesus immediately knows that power has gone out from him. It does not tell me in the story whether power has gone out from him before, but then he says something that's profound, and I said it a while ago. He looked at the woman and he said, "It's your faith that has healed you." And I want to say to Jesus, well, wait a minute. No, it's your power that has healed me. But Jesus says to the woman, it's your faith. Could it be that the faith of this woman was unlike any of the others around her? And when she touched the hem of the garment of Jesus, she was so desperate and she was so longing. She needed something to happen in her life. That there was something so profoundly different about her faith that Jesus recognized it. And when he turned to her and he said, "Daughter," he said, "it's your faith that has healed you." May it be said of you, and may it be said of me, that man or that woman is a man or a woman of great faith. And if you want them to join you in prayer, I would go to them. I would have them call out for you and with you on your behalf, because they are a person of great faith. I wrote this down. We often want the power without experiencing the faith in our lives. We often want the power without the faith, but faith and power are directly related. Everybody say related. Let's talk about fear for a second. Everybody say fear. I wrote this down. Never let your fear decide your future. Your future is in the hands of God, yet you have to respond to it. You either respond to it by faith or you respond to it by fear. Faith ignites, fear extinguishes. Where faith refuses to give up, fear accepts the here and now and will not move forward. Fear will listen to the report or listen to the voices of people in your life. Sometimes you need different voices in your life. Sometimes you need different people speaking in your life. Find somebody that is going to speak by faith in your life. Are y'all with me, church? Where faith crushes into Jesus, fear sees the crowd and backs away. How many of us have backed away? How many of us go, well, I'm not going to do this. I'll be the nice one. I'll let somebody go in my place. I don't believe that was this woman right here. She was so desperate, nobody was going to take her place or stand in line for her. She needed to touch Jesus. Where faith receives the power of Jesus, fear holds back. Everybody say holds back. Because it might make you look weird, strange, crazy. It might cause somebody to think that you're off your rocker. Fear holds you back from believing that there is any hope for your circumstance. Courage. This is what faith produces in our life, is courage. Everybody say courage. I wrote this down. Courage is not the absence of fear, but it is the presence of faith. Those are not one and the same. Courage is not the absence of fear, but it is the presence of faith. Let me talk to you a little bit about Church Alive right now. We've been on this journey for almost 16 years. In September, we'll celebrate 16 years. About 12 to 1,400 people call this church home over that time. Can we give the Lord praise for that? It's mind-boggling. And really what we've done on this campus was built and designed for about 300 to 400 people, max. It was not built and designed for anything beyond 300 to 400. In fact, when the sewer people came and we put a new sewer in on the sewer area over there, they told us it's the last time that they would do a sewer. We'd have to tap into the city water, but they allowed us to do it, and I'm going to tell you why they said they would allow us to do it. Because you are a church and you meet one time on the weekend. We were like, okay, yes, thank you so much. We did not share vision and hope and for the future at that bubble. We needed the sewer line in. We're operating on borrowed time here on this site. I'm just telling you. And unless something were to have happened over the last few months, the elders and I have been meeting sometimes weekly, fasting, praying, exhausting every single opportunity. It came down to this for us, and this is where faith meets fear. Do we stay on this site for the foreseeable future, or do we relocate our church? Now, the easy thing to do is always to stay where you are. How many of you know that's the easiest thing to do? It's always easy. If you don't know because you didn't raise your hand, it's always easier to stay where you are. I'll ask you again. How many of you know it's always easier to stay where you are than it is? It is. I promise you, it's just easy. And so we were going to exhaust that route, and we did. I have two elders here this morning. I had 4 at the 8:30. They're a little more spiritual than these two. Just kidding. No, I'm kidding. I love all of our elders. They're amazing. We met. What we felt was the back property behind the gym was pivotal to any chance of us staying here on this site. In case you didn't know, we're crammed in here like an oyster in a little shell. I mean, there's nowhere to park. There's no water. We have well water and we have a sewer here, but we are here, and the church has grown as it has, even with all of the obstacles against a church growing. Can we give the Lord praise for his faithfulness here? Amen. We called a covenant partnership meeting in late February, early March, for the set purpose of us exploring to buy the house and the lot behind this church. In that process, the elders and I agreed, and in full agreement, and there's so much peace about this, that if we don't lock that down and we don't buy that, then we know there is no future here on this site. I want you to know that I know when you drive by, you go, well, there's a whole lot of land in the front. Number one, it's not a lot of land. It's not as much as you think it is. And number two, there's a huge obstacle with this land called a hill. Everybody say hill. I'm telling you, we have looked at every angle to do something with this hill, and every time it comes back to us with humongous dollar signs. It is very expensive to do stuff on a hill. It just is. And so we know that. We knew that going in. So we made a run for the house in the back. We made an offer. We gave the offer to the gal in the back. She verbally actually agreed to the offer. And we thought it was actually more than what we wanted to spend on the house. But we thought, hey, it's important. It's probably more valuable to us than anybody else. Even if we ended up bulldozing the house, which is probably what we would end up doing if we built on the backside of the gym. And so she verbally agreed. We got the contract together, and she would not sign the contract. And so we were like, okay, what is going on? Why won't you sign the contract? You agreed. We met with her several times, and she said, why are y'all in such a rush to buy the house? Da, 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 da. And I said, well, we really aren't. You agreed to sell the house for this price, the whole 9 yards. So we said, when you're ready to sell the house, let us know, and we'll make a run for it. Well, I drove over here one Sunday afternoon, and I saw a for sale sign in there, or a RE/MAX sign in the yard that said coming soon. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I was fighting flesh and faith right there. I know you never do that. But I'm like, what is going on here? God has got. What is going on? God has got this. I drove to her house, knocked on the door. She came out, and I said, I didn't do this, but I'm like, my spirit man was doing this. I'm like, good to see you today. We made an offer on your house. We would really like to buy your house. I'm selling it for more. I said, but we had an agreement. And we had a verbal agreement. She never signed the document. And she said, I'm going to put it on the market for this amount, and I'll sell it to you for this amount. And it was more than what we agreed to. And I said, we kind of have our line too, where is it really worth the feasibility of spending that much money for a small lot? So we came back, we prayed about it, we all agreed, nope. We had an agreement. We actually felt like what we offered her for the house is more than what she's going to get for the house. Just so you know, we didn't lowball her on the house. We actually went above And so hallelujah. We went through a process. We're still praying. We're still fasting. We're still believing. If we don't own that lot, then God is telling us it's time to look to relocate Church Alive. Okay? And I'm telling you that's in the back of our minds. And I'm like, let this work, Jesus. Let this work, Jesus. Because it's always easier to stay where you are than it is to step out of where you are. Ask Peter. Peter stepped out of the boat. When his eyes were on Jesus, he was fine. When he got him off, he sunk, right? So I'm like, we just want to stay in the boat. In fact, we have the bottom of Noah's Ark here above you. We'll just stay right here. We'll stay in the boat. I'm just going to tell you, through the process, and I mean it's a long process, of going back and forth, and we said, we even agreed to potentially go a little higher, but we needed to do an inspection on the house. We were willing to buy the house without an inspection. We did the inspection, and these two elders will agree with me, it was not good. The inspection was just not good. It was going to cost a lot of money after we owned the house. So we decided through prayer and fasting and looking at all this, that door is closed. That house is on the market. You'll see it back there for sale. If you want to buy it, run the race. Maybe you want to buy it and donate it to the church. Just kidding. But if you want to buy it, you run the race. But here's what we are going to do. And I'm going to make this proclamation to you right now. Boy, we're about to take a faith journey. Everybody say faith. And I want to preface this by saying, the church and the land down the road that we were trying to buy was never in the future for Church Alive. We made that very clear. That is not a part of this process at all. We were never supposed to be connected in that situation. I think I shared a little bit of that with you. And so what I'm about to share with you, this is what we believe. We are looking every day, hours of the day, in southern Wake County, which would include Holly Springs and Fuquay, for land to relocate our church in the future to. Here's what I want you to pray with us about, Church Alive. I want you to pray how many of you say, I will pray with you about that first? Let me see your hand. Good, thank you. And I believe you. And it's going to be on your prayer points, by the way, every time, every month. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we need about 15 acres to really, this site right here, do you know how much we're operating on? We own about 5.5 acres, but we do church on about 3 of these acres because we can't use the front, and the side field over there is a septic field, and you can't park on it or you're going to have really problems because you're going to get out of your car one day and you're going to sink. But I won't tell you what you're sinking in. We'll just pray for you. Visual images are very powerful. We are looking all along 401 here, all the way up to 1010 Road, all the way back, Lake Wheeler Road, all the way up to 1010 Road, in and around the entire Middle Creek, Holly Springs area, all the way down to Highway 55, back down and around through 401. So this is the area that we're looking in. It is the fastest growing area in all of Wake County, hands down. It is the area that we should be in as a church. And I'm going to be really bold with you right now. Here's what the Lord really impressed on me. We should not pray for the outer fringes. We should pray to be smack dab in the middle of where everything is happening, because God wants to use this church in the middle of where people are at and where people are moving and what God is doing. Are y'all with me, church? So here's what I want you to do. You raise your hand, you said you pray. I want you to pray specifically. Maybe you know somebody that has land that would be willing to sell. Maybe you've seen a piece of property that was for sale. Listen, we are looking at all land. If you know somebody, maybe you know somebody that might give the church land. Hallelujah. Everybody say give. Oh, yes. But we're not looking for something for free. This church has never done that. That has never been in our mantra. We've always bought whatever it is, but we're certainly open to people giving land to the church. That is not, we're not against that. So you pray with us. It's going to be an incredible journey. It's going to be a journey of faith. It's the intersection of faith and fear. But for the first time in the history of our church, we will be 16 years old in September. We will actually get the opportunity to introduce Church Alive to the community in this way, because whenever people see something happening, they're attracted to it. They're going, well, let me go check this church out. Let me go check and see. Let me go see what's happening here. Now, maybe that doesn't light your fire, but it does mine, because what's happening in this church needs to be, I believe, needs to be reached out far, far and wide. Are y'all with me, church? Would you stand with me today? How many of you would say, Pastor, I will specifically pray with you about land for Church Alive? Amen. Thank you.